internal section of the middle part here. These are all stainless steel, so they're really a lot harder to mess with. So for example, I put a set screw, I guess I'll show you guys. I put a set screw underneath here. That's how you take this off, by the way. Set screw right there. That serves to lock this chassis that's inside of here in place, so that when this is sliding up and down, this chassis stays completely rock solid. It doesn't move around much anyhow, but you don't want it moving at all. So that set screw does that. But drilling that hole was a beast. I mean, I had 5 different Dremel bits and 5 different drill bits and a hammer drill, and it still took me 15-20 minutes. But anyhow, so this guy and this guy are locked in by that little screw, and they're both completely removable, well, at least the way I built it. So this is actually the main everything of this saber. This guy, like I said, it's got ball bearing locks, so that's these ball bearings, and then there's little tiny holes here that they lock into when you twist it. And like I said, the action's really nice, so it's just fun to kind of lock it in. But they just, they just slide on and off here, no problem. But as soon as you want them to be set, you just take your Allen wrench, make sure that they're lined up in the correct area, and screw it down until it gets tight, and then back it off a quarter of a turn, and then you're back to having them locked in place. And this is really strong. This is not floppy or flimsy or anything you have to worry about coming apart. So nothing to worry about there. Perfect. Okay, so now as I was saying, that part is made of stainless steel, and so is this guy, which means it's really hard to drill through or mess with, which means that for the purposes of blade retention, Korbanth, the one thing he missed here is he didn't put a tapped threaded hole in there. You could spin it all around. I'm doing, but you can't tell. Spin it around and there's just nothing there. So to actually set your blade, you have to take this off, and then you've got 2 retention screws, one on either side, which is nice because that's extra solid. You really only need 1, but 2 is bonus. But you can't just do it without taking this bit off, which is not a big deal. It's just a little bit of a big deal. Well, no, it's a little deal. But anyhow, that's how you do it. So blade goes in. I elected to go with the 7/8 inch blade. I just like the look better, but since this is a 1-inch emitter, you have to have a adapter here. Luckily I had a couple extras, but this is not something that the hilt comes with. This is something you guys would have to get afterwards on your own, and they're not necessarily all that easy to find. If you need some stock custom works, Dimitri Stock has them, and I have them, and you can probably find them, randomly elsewhere. But the other thing you can do is use a piece of 1-inch blade. The plastic blades themselves, if you cut a section of 1 inch, it's got the same diameter and measurements as this metal piece, so you could actually slide a piece of 1-inch blade in there and then slide a 7/8 blade inside of that, and it would be relatively solid, certainly solid enough to swing around. I wouldn't duel with it. You'd want something really solid and metal for that, but it'll work, and certainly in a pinch it'll work. What we did here is a Pogo pin blade connector, custom Saber Shop's design. I also used one of their blade connector housings, the clear plastic you can see around here. That's meant to be installed into a blade to hold the blade side connector, but it was great for this build because it's only that tall. I dremeled it down to this tall. So because this is all metal, you wouldn't want to put that connector right into this emitter because you're going to potentially run into ground effects and, you know, different wires conducting directly with the hilt itself. So you need some insulation between the connector and the hilt. So that clear plastic ring, A, is an absolute perfect fit for the inside of here, and B, is really low profile, so it doesn't take up a lot of room. You don't have a lot of room to work with here, right? I mean, the blade can only go in, let's see, it's going in that far. That's half an inch. So if you only have half an inch to work with, you don't want to lose any of that half inch by having a connector be sticking up too far. You really want it to be as low profile as you can get it into the emitter here. So that's how I handled that. The other thing that I did to avoid the issue of wires and things pulling or getting tangled or breaking, much like the Obi-Wan Inception Elite hilt that I did, rather than have wires going from here to the backside of this connector, so that when you pulled this out, the wires would stretch, and when you put it back in, they're crammed in and jumbled together. You're going to end up breaking them. You just, you know, do away with the need for wires in there, and you use a second blade connector setup, and if you look inside here, you can see the other end of that connector. Once again, I used the plastic TCSS blade connector housings, one in here and also one in here. Let's see if I can show you. Yes, I can unscrew this guy also. It's hard to see because it's been painted, but this piece here used to be about that tall. What I did was machine it down to about just over 1/8 of an inch, and then this secondary black ring here is another one of those plastic TCSS blade connector housings. I ground it, sanded it, and polished it, and rounded it out so that it's got a nice round smooth finish, and then painted it black so that it looks like it's actually part of the hilt, but it isn't. It's definitely a secondary part, but that again acts as an insulator so that no electrical or other data or ground, anything like that, is grounding out or touching any of the metal of the hilt. But it's just, you know, it's a pretty straightforward, pretty simple design here. You just, every time you have a new section of the hilt that's going to be moving or coming apart, rather than have wires, you have connectors. And as long as they're low profile enough, and as long as you're careful enough when you do it, they will fit in there, everything will screw back together and work the way it's supposed to work. You can't use big connectors because there just isn't room, but luckily for us, Custom Saber Shop designed these connectors you know, really thoughtfully and carefully so that they work in a number of different ways, lots of different applications. So, that's how this beast works. Let's fire it up so you guys can see it. And like I said, you have to take this off to get your blade